Hello and welcome to another video. Today with an early to mid-game upgrade for the Lightning Merc. We are now rocking a Gemling setup that allows us to use the same support gem on multiple skills and allows us to focus mostly on strength or health while ignoring intelligence entirely. So we are pretty stupid. Now if you're looking at the Witchhunter explosions and thinking, well, I would much prefer to have those explosions, you're not going to miss out all that much because we are rocking a Herald of Fire combination with Herald of Thunder for some insane visual clutter making you wish you can turn off animations. But we do not, because it's shiny. Bosses drop like flies, clearing maps is very enjoyable with barely anything being able to harm you, and you are also very fast without being a deadeye, which is probably better because it's currently meta, so it's probably going to get nerfed into the shitter. Overall, this build is a joy to play. Thematically very fitting, because we jam as many jewels into our skill tree as possible and abuse the magnitude of shocks and ailments to blast everything before us. If you're looking for a leveling guide, I also have you covered. You can find the link down below or somewhere on the screen. Anyway, let's have a look at the skill tree and see what I cooked up. Now, first let's have a look at the skill tree. You can actually play this build with just 4 Ascendancy points, so you don't need to have the support gem here. I will provide you with something else in that specific slot for that skill. If you only have 2 Ascendancies, go for enhanced effectiveness, doubling the bonus of strength and dexterity so you don't miss, and you have basically like 300 health additionally. Yeah, it's like 260 plus 8% because you get 8% through the campaign, so it's around 300 currently for you, so you're going to rock around 2.7, maybe even 3k in the end game. Very enjoyable. So that offsets the mitigation, the 30% mitigation that I get. But currently I don't have the 4th Ascendancy, so I am rocking the gem studded with adaptive capability because we need to stack strength as much as possible or dexterity as much as possible, depends on what you really want, and we want to ignore the stat requirements of intelligence or strength or so on. The quality of all skills is better early on. It's going to give you a little bit more capacity in your magazine with your bolts, but currently for this setup, this one is better. Now let's have a decent look at the skill tree. We're going to not path through projectile damage anymore. We're going to pick up the attack speed for faster reloads and faster, well, gameplay. And later on, we are going to path through here to battle hardened. You get really decent evasion rating nodes here, but this is something you want to do very late, so around level 80. Before that, you're going to path down here. You want as much strength and dexterity as your gear demands. We don't need weapon swap speed. I made a mistake during the leveling guide. This one is completely useless. I timed the frames and this one doesn't do anything. Then we go for the crossbow reload speed. There is quite a lot here, and we also get a gem slot here. Now something that is extremely important to this build. Magnitude of shocks you inflict as well as magnitude of ailments you inflict are very important. Magnitude of shocks you inflict with crossbow reload speed is extremely expensive currently, around 30x per joule. This one cost me 1. The only difference is that the top end magnitude roll is only 15 instead of 20, so you're going to lose a tiny amount of, well, damage, but you're going to save a lot of money. Other stats that are really good are duration of shocks on enemies, magnitude of shocks you inflict, lightning penetration for pinnacle bosses later on. Chance to shock is also very good on this character because we want as much shock chance as possible to inflict that permanently on enemies, so we are benefiting through that more multiplier. The skill tree progression is very easy. You just follow the line, pick up the attack speed here, so you get a chance to blind enemies. Blinding enemies will make them less accurate and improve your evasion rating. We're going to maim enemies, which makes them slower and reduces their evasion rating, so that's also really nice for kiting. And we pick up along the way stuff like lightning rod, which makes you hit lucky. So if your damage is going to roll, it's going to roll 2 times, meaning you get on average 75% of the maximum roll on the hit. Crit is off the table. It is extremely expensive and point intensive and doesn't make sense for this class. For lightning penetration, you will see there is quite a lot on the tree you can pick up. There is a little bit here, there is a little bit here, there is a little bit here, and you can also pick up 15% here and a lot of penetration right here. But it is not important for you. Why? Because bosses mostly, have resistances between 30 and 75%. If you go above that, practically useless. So just for the pinnacle bosses, when you're starting to attempt pinnacle bosses, you're going to pick up this specific node and you are basically capped with just 1 jewel that has 10 penetration, or you're very close to that. So don't waste points on that. Next up, we have skill speed improvements, or just attack speed, the shock duration nodes here and magnitude of shocks. We pick up the evasion nodes here, all around here, and the dexterity points here, so we can save up a little bit more in strength. We have Calamity for 50% increased lightning damage, very, very good. And you're also going to pick up 1 reduced reservation for Herald skills if you have an amulet, like I do, with just 13 spirit, because you need 15 spirit. If you have 15 spirit, this point is completely useless and you don't need this point. You can spend it elsewhere. Like for example, at level 80, you can pick up this battle hardened 20% reduced critical damage received. Extremely good. You get strength, dexterity, evasion rating, top tier node. Very, very strong. Up here, we have 15% more maximum damage. So that's also a more multiplier to your damage. We have jewel slots here. We have magnitude of shocks and shock duration, also extremely good. And that's about it. We are now level 80, so there is very little we can do in terms of points. You can expect, if you play this character for like 5 additional days, you can reach like level 90. For level 90, you want to pick up the evasion nodes here. You want to pick up this node, Battled Hardened. That's 3 points. Now we have 7 points remaining. What do we do with those 7 points? We pick up armor here, evasion rating also here, and evasion rating at low life. 80% is huge, especially when we pick up later acrobatics at around 20k evasion rating. We are currently rocking with my setup 10k, so if with a better chest and those nodes, you should reach around 20k. With acrobatics, that's 70% less. If we, for example, take off our headpiece, that's 2k evasion we are missing now. That's only 4% estimated evasion chance. So if we lower our total evasion to around 8k, 7k, 6k, we are still going to rock around 70% evasion, but we can also evade AoE effects. And the AoE effects are very nasty for this build because you cannot mitigate them. So you need a health pool if you're going to get hit and resistances, but with acrobatics, you will be able to dodge those hits. But those hits need the additional evasion nodes here, and right here. Additionally, something that you can pick up are those nodes here. That's 60% for just 2 points, but you need to be surrounded. So if you're getting swarmed, you get 60% more evasion rating, which is really, really good. And this sets you up for level 90. Everything above level 90 is basically just a dream. The last 10 points you don't need to plan around. They're basically unobtainable for a regular player. You will get bored beyond belief. Even players that are blasting for 1 week are around level 91, 92. So I wouldn't expect you to get those points. Next up, the skill gems. We're going to take a look at our first bread and butter skill, so galvanic shards. I'm going to look at the 5-link setup, so 5 socket setup. You can obtain this one by just corrupting a gem. Remember, you cannot put quality on this one. This is very important because, well, your bolt capacity is going to be lower, which is less DPS basically because you need to reload quite a lot more, but it's going to save you a ton of exalts. Now, for this setup, you're going to use primal armament, fork for clearing, lightning infusion and conduction. Why the additional shock chance? Because when an enemy is shocked by this skill, we deal around 60 to 70 more damage. If we hex an enemy with voltaic mark, we're going to increase the effect by 30%. So that's quite potent for clearing. If you do not have the additional shock chance, this skill is not going to shock all enemies all the time. It's going to feel a little bit clunky, a little bit bad to play. But with this setup, perfect. For the 6th slot right here, I would prefer to go with something like overcharge for the increased magnitude of shocks, 75%. So that's going to be a massive increase to the damage. But you can also go with controlled destruction. Since we don't want to crit or don't need to crit, that's 30% additional damage on the skill. Very, very easy to get. Next up, our shock burst rounds. Same here, 4 slots. Concentrated effect goes into the first one. The area of effect is quite tiny anyway. So we get 40% more damage. We get 25% more attack speed. Feels amazing. You can actually use Martial Temper also on galvanic shards at the 6th slot. It's going to feel much better for clearing if you have a slow crossbow. Elemental focus, because we don't actually need to inflict any type of ailment with the shock burst rounds, the chance is also very low because we are shipping enemies with multiple small hits. So that's 25% more damage. And we have primal armament for easy 25% more elemental damage. For the last slot, controlled destruction can be a valid option. But if they are going to fix this skill, and we can use the additional clip size of 7 bolts with quality, currently it is bugged and doesn't work, we can actually use the magazine reload stuff. So we get 25 to 30% additional more multiplier because of the clip size, and we can then still use the critical strike chance to increase our damage by a tiny amount. I think it's like 2 to 3% more damage if they fix the skill. Otherwise, controlled destruction is the best. Now, our shock application is going to be mostly taken care of with galvanic shards, but sometimes enemies will need a little bit more help. So we're going to use voltaic grenade with overcharge, conduction, and lasting shock. So the shock is going to be very potent and very long, and sometimes you are also going to electrocute an enemy, but the chance is very low. You need a ton of grenades, not worth it. And we have plasma bolt or blast, lasting shock, overcharge, and scattershot. Scattershot makes it so you shoot 3 times with this skill instead of just 1 after charging it up. This one can be used when an enemy is staggered or a boss is staggered, or when they are charging up their first attack when you encounter them. Otherwise, don't use the skill. The charge up time is too long and you are going to get swarmed and killed. So for the initial opening phase, you're going to use Plasma Blast, and then afterwards we'll take Grenade as well as Galvanic Shards until you proc the shock, and then you're going to use the Shock Burst rounds because the pulse is going to deal devastating damage once an enemy is affected by a shock, so a lightning ailment. Next up is Voltaic Mark. We are going to apply this mark on enemies once they're shocked or before they're shocked. Doesn't matter, it needs to be on bosses basically all the time. It's going to improve your DPS. Then we have Emergency Reload, that's 27% more damage with Premediation, 15% more damage, Ingenuity, 30% increased cooldown recovery rate, and more skill effect duration. Now the skill effect duration at this point is not important, so actually want to have it on the skill. Later on, you're going to swap it on Voltaic Mark, so you don't need to reapply the mark constantly, and it's going to be much easier and more convenient to use. Lastly, we're going to take a look at our reserves. So as mentioned before, you need 15 additional spirit, be it through an amulet or your chest. We're going to use Herald of Thunder with quality. The quality is going to increase the damage massively, because it's going to add 2 additional attacks to the skill. Going to be a massive boost to your damage, so you want to quality the skill as soon as possible. You also want to keep the level of the skill as high as possible. Now, as you can see here, the dexterity requirement for the skill is 46 or 146. I don't have that. How is this one active? If you use and activate the Herald of Thunder with additional dexterity on, for example, your chest or something else, or in the skill tree, you can keep it active and then take off the points in your passive tree, and it's going to still be active. This is a bug and will probably be fixed, but currently it is working, so you can play around a little bit more with your dexterity requirements. We're going to use Precision for accuracy rating and Innervate. Innervate is going to proc on the skill during clearing, so if the strikes hit enemies, they're going to kill a shocked enemy, and you will get global 35% additional damage as lightning for 3 seconds. Very, very strong. Then we have Wind Dancer for more evasion rating, and Herald of Thunder for a maximum life of enemies dealt overkill. So it's at least 20%, going to be a huge boost to your kill speed. In combination with Cannibalism, we get life recovered on kill. So during regular play, mapping, you're going to sustain very, very well with this build. Now, let's have a look at gear. My resistances are nearly capped, so my fire resistance will be capped anyway. If you're going to use a Waystone with a tier of 10 or higher, your resistances will be lowered by 10% additionally. So keep that in mind. That's why I have fire resistance overcapped by 10%. For your weapon, you want to have as much physical damage as possible. However, a weapon like this one that has a ton of additional elemental damage as lightning damage is also going to work very, very well for this build. I used this one for a long time. I upgraded to this one just recently. It felt like I was losing damage at first because of modifiers on enemies, because they evade more. But later on, I tested this one on bosses. This one is outperforming the other weapon by around 20%. So not all that much. Remember, this weapon also has attack speed on it. For your other gear specifically, you want to look for evasion rating. Very important on your chest. Very, very important on your helmet. Boots and gloves can be neglected a little bit, but those two are very, very important. So the helmet and the body armor so you can reach high amounts of evasion rating. You ideally want to have increased evasion rating instead of armor on the amulet, because it's going to scale your evasion rating by a massive amount. That's like 2k or even 3k additionally to what you already have. On your rings, you want to stack your maximum life, chaos resistance, strength, very good stats. This ring, for example, is basically a 200 Exalt ring. You cannot expect to have something like this. I gambled for this one, slammed it, want to showcase it because it's very important to cap your resistances later on. And with GG gear comes GG responsibilities. So you either sell this one or keep living a little bit longer. Now, for the ring, if you're looking for stats, elemental resistances, total elemental resistances on the ring are very, very important. You want to have some chaos resistance. I have 28% in combination with a charm. So the amethyst charm, very, very important. Like I said, very important. And I still have one slot here. I am not entirely sure what I should do here. Additional chaos resistance or 5 additional all resistance, or I can go with 2% additional maximum life. Very solid choices. I haven't slotted in the rune yet because I don't need it currently, and I want to keep the slot open for when I decide to use it. Otherwise, if you find increased rarity of items found on any of your gear, very good, keep it. And for the belt, again, maximum life, resistances, very important. Strength, also, whenever you find strength or dexterity on your gear, stat requirements are going to shift. You need to adjust your passive tree accordingly. Ideally, you want to have a high maximum life roll with a strength roll. Basically sums up the gearing process and what the character is about. I will update this character further because it's very fun to play, and I will hopefully be able to showcase pinnacle bosses in the next one with tier 14, 15 maps. So make sure to sub, like, comment, whatever, and see you next time. Bye.